It is officially 2024. What a year it's been, man. It's been a tough year. Most of the people that I've talked to have had a really tough 2023. I know a lot of you probably have your New Year's resolutions in, and I know for a fact that a lot of you are going to give up on them by February. So don't do that. Keep your New Year's resolutions in check. Go to the gym, man. Go travel. Go to that party. Go talk to that girl. Just socialize. Go out. Do something. Do something with your life. Record a video. Go to school. Do something, okay? Do something, because if you don't, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna get depressed, you're gonna get sad, and yeah, you're gonna overthink. So just get out there, just go for something, bro. Make a video, record a video like I'm doing, make a YouTube channel, make a TikTok. 2024, this is going to be your year. Get the fuck after it, man. With that said, I got a comment suggesting me to watch The Fallen of World War II, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So yeah, we're gonna be reacting to this, and once again, Happy New Year's, everybody. Even though it doesn't even matter, it's just another day, but still. 2024. And as for me and my New Year's resolutions, I just want to keep working on my YouTube, man. I really want to grow this channel more than it's ever grown before. I've been making YouTube videos for the past 3 years now, and it's been an absolute joy. I think I created this channel in 2020, so technically 4 years. I've enjoyed every second of it. All of it has been great, and I just don't remember the last time I was passionate about something as much as I'm passionate about making videos. And doing these reaction videos here and there really does give me some joy and make me smile. So I'm gonna keep doing this more than ever before, at a higher pace than ever before. I'm going to be more active than ever before, and I'm hoping to make a career out of this. So yeah, that's my New Year's resolution, to keep working on my YouTube, keep working on myself, keep working out. And it's going to be the last year of my university. So yeah, I'm done with school this year. Finally done with school. Finally done with uni. After 4 long years, I'm finally getting my degree in political science and economics. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but yeah, I'm excited for the future, and 2024 is gonna be a great one. Literally an hour ago was 2023 for me, and to be completely honest, I do really have a good feeling for 2024. Without further ado, let's get right into the reaction. The Fallen of World War II. Let's get right into this.
The average lifespan of an American is 80 years. And an 80-year-old today was 10 when World War II ended, 4 when it began. A soldier who saw battle would have to be in his late 80s at least today. Generals, political leaders, the decision makers of the war, few are still with us. And over the past few decades, we've seen authors and filmmakers rush to capture stories from survivors before this connection of memory is lost. This project is not about individual war stories, and it's not about survivors. We're going to tally up the tens of millions of people whose lives are cut short by the war, and see how these numbers stack up to other wars in history, including trends in recent conflicts. We'll be counting soldiers and civilians separately. Each of these figures represents 1,000 people who died. Civilians were of all walks of life, whereas military deaths were almost entirely men. The average age was about 23. In most battles, for every 1,000 soldiers killed, there are more than 1,000 who were injured. The word casualty can be confusing because in military speak, it often includes both deaths and injuries, and anything else that takes a soldier out of service. Here, we're just counting the deaths, and we'll begin with American soldiers. Over 400,000 died. Most of the deaths occurred in the European theater, fighting the Nazis. And about a quarter were in the Pacific, fighting the Japanese. When you put them on the timeline, you see that casualties were the heaviest at the end of the war. The war began on September 1st, 1939. But the US wasn't willing to join the fight until Pearl Harbor, 2 years in. The deaths increased drastically on D-Day, when the Allies invaded Normandy. One of the most tragic moments of the war was on D-Day at Omaha Beach, where 2,500 Americans fell. So about the same number of US soldiers died on this single beach landing as the entire 13 years of the recent war in Afghanistan. The bloodiest battle in the Pacific was Okinawa, which lasted 82 days, during which 12,500 Americans died. About 5,000 of these deaths were at sea from kamikaze attacks. Now let's look at some other countries, starting with Europe. Germany started World War II when it invaded Poland. Poland ultimately lost 200,000 soldiers in the war. Most died after the invasion while the country was occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union. Germany, meanwhile, lost just 16,000 in the invasion of Poland. The Nazis went on to invade and conquer other countries, including Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Greece, and Yugoslavia. France surrendered, but after losing 92,000 soldiers in the Battle of France. Over 200,000 ultimately fell, which includes deaths in POW camps, French colonies, and other fighting. Yugoslavia suffered almost 500,000 military deaths. The initial invasion brought relatively few casualties on both sides, but the deaths mounted under Nazi occupation due to guerrilla fighting, civil conflict, and mass executions. The Nazi invasions were swift, with relatively few German losses. Even the Nazi commanders expressed surprise at their success. And then we have the United Kingdom and the United States, who were not invaded but took the fight to the Nazis. Britain lost about the same number of soldiers as the US, which includes the British colonies. Germany lost about 500,000 soldiers fighting the US and Britain in what is known as the Western Front, which took place in France and Belgium. But most Nazi soldiers died in the Eastern Front, Germany's unsuccessful invasion of the Soviet Union. The numbers are staggering. The most famous battle of the Eastern Front, and perhaps the turning point of the European war, was Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army successfully took Stalingrad, but then got surrounded by the Soviets and cut off from food and ammunition. 500,000 Nazis would ultimately die in Stalingrad. Another 100,000 were taken prisoner, of which 6,000 would ever return. POWs had a low survival rate throughout World War II, and it was particularly grim in the East. When you include these POWs, roughly the same number of Germans died in Stalingrad as all the Western Front fighting against France, the UK, and the US. And though Stalingrad was a victory for the Soviets, they suffered almost twice as many losses as Germany. The Soviet Union would eventually defeat the once unstoppable German army, killing 2.3 million Nazi soldiers. But winning the war came at a cost.
Bro, it just keeps going. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going, man. That's
8.7 million is the official tally by the Russian military, a hotly disputed number. Some studies have calculated as many as 14 million dead. To complete the count of European military deaths, we need to add German deaths from other fronts, including the North and Africa, as well as deaths from other Axis powers allied with the Nazis, Hungary, Romania, and Italy. When you put these European military deaths on the timeline, it looks like this. You can now interact with the chart to learn more. Pause the narration if you would like more time. And now we switch to civilian deaths in Europe. Six million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust. If you separate this by country, you see that about half, 2.7 million, were Polish. 700,000 were Soviets, followed by Hungary and 17 other countries. Broken down another way, about half of the 6 million were killed in the concentration camps. Over 1 million died in Auschwitz. Most were killed in the gas chambers. Others died from starvation, exhaustion, disease, and other forms of execution. The second most deadly camp was Treblinka, which was exclusively an extermination camp, set up to look like a train station. Mobile killing groups killed 1.4 million Jews. Like with the gas chambers, men were killed first to reduce the risk of revolt. The Holocaust also includes non-Jewish deaths. Between 130,000 to 500,000 Roma, then called Gypsies, were killed. The numbers are disputed. About 250,000 people with disabilities were killed. Homosexuals, Catholics, and other groups were also exterminated, but their numbers were relatively small. Some historians say that other civilian deaths should go under the label of Holocaust. About 2 million non-Jewish Poles were killed under German occupation, some of which were sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz. When you combine civilian and military deaths, over 16% of the total Polish population died in World War II, which is the highest percentage of any country. But not the highest in total death count. The Soviet Union again tops that list, losing at least as many civilians as it did soldiers, somewhere between 10 and 20 million. A particularly dark moment for the Soviet Union was the siege of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. German forces surrounded Leningrad before civilians could be evacuated. Supplies, including food, were cut off for 2.5 years.
2.5 years, bro? 2.5 years, bro. That's crazy. Bro, Israel cut off food and water to Gaza for like a week, and the whole world shut down. 2.5 years. And also, while we're on the topic, like, because of all the villainization of Jews that's been going on recently, people really forget the massacre of Jews in the hands of the Nazis. It's just constant villainization nowadays. So this is very refreshing and eye-opening. This is some crazy shit, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's a lot of shit here that I didn't know, and this is very informative.
1.5 million people died as a result. Mostly from starvation, mostly civilians. Stalin's cruelty towards his own people is partly responsible for these numbers. He often didn't allow civilians to evacuate from cities, thinking it would cause the soldiers protecting them to fight harder. About 1 million Soviets died in Stalin's own labor camps, called the Gulag. Just about every country suffered civilian losses, especially countries who were invaded. While many died as a result of so-called collateral damage, the biggest numbers occurred when it was no accident. Civilians were exterminated, purposely fired upon or bombed, used as human shields, or intentionally deprived of food. The intentional killing of civilians was done by most warring parties, including the United Kingdom and the United States. The United Kingdom was spared of a land invasion, but still lost 60,000 civilians, largely from German air raids or blitzes, often directed at civilian population centers. The UK did the same to German cities at a much greater magnitude, causing about 10 times the number of deaths. But most German civilian deaths came from the ground at the late stage of the war. When the Nazi regime collapsed, civilians living in occupied regions had to desperately flee from the advancing Soviet army. Rapes were widespread, and death estimates ranged from 600,000 to 3 million.
Bro, I am so glad that I was born in the year 2000. Like, I'm so glad I was born into the 21st century, man. I really didn't, like, I'm pretty sure no one wanted to deal with this shit, but I'm so glad I didn't have to deal with this shit. Like, this would have been a fucking nightmare to deal with. It's not like we don't have war now, but you know what I mean. I love technology. I love the fact that we're in a stable place. Not really. To be completely honest, not really. We're not even in the sleep. We used to be in a stable place. There was a couple of years there where no war was happening. Because there was a couple of years there where, like, there wasn't any war. And everyone was chill, bro. Everyone was cool. Everyone was chilling. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the US attacks Iraq and then Afghanistan. And then that leads to disputes between Iran and Israel, and then they attack Israel, and then Israel attacks Gaza. But before that, we had Russia attacking Ukraine because the US interfered with their internal affairs and decided to allow Ukraine to join NATO. Like, there's a lot of shit that's going on nowadays that makes me really scared, man. Really terrifies the fuck out of me. But when you look at this shit, when you realize how fucked the world was back then, like, alright, maybe it's not so bad now. Even though it's like, it fucking is. Like, kids in Gaza are getting bombed to fuck, bro. They're flatlining Gaza like it's nothing. And I'm over here recording a video. The point is, there was a few years there where everyone was chilling, right? Everyone was fine. No one wanted to attack nobody. And then COVID happened. Shit went left. After COVID, shit really went left. Before COVID, we had like a few attacks here and there. Obama bombed that nursery. And then they attacked Iraq. The US was doing most of the killing. It was like a little kill here and there, a little kill here and there. But now, it's full on war. So, yeah, man, watching this shit really puts things into perspective.
Let's step back and see where we are with the totals. We just counted about 20 million civilian deaths in Europe. If you add this to the European military deaths we already covered, it brings us to over 40 million. Then we have the Asian theater. Here we see the vast majority of military deaths in Asia came from China and Japan. On the civilian side, about 6 million deaths from China, Indonesia, Korea, Indochina, and the Philippines can be attributed to Japanese war crimes, which are sometimes compared to the Nazi atrocities due to the sheer scale of the cruelty. China had the second highest death count after the Soviet Union. And like the Soviets, the Chinese government demonstrated a stunning willingness to sacrifice its own people. Chinese nationalists opened the dike at the Yellow River, hoping the flood would halt the Japanese advance. 500,000 Chinese civilians or more were killed, which is 2 or 3 times the number who died in all countries in the 2004 Asian tsunamis. But the invasion of China only cost Japan 200,000 soldiers. Most were killed fighting the US and allies in the Pacific War. A significant portion of Japanese civilian deaths were caused by American firebombing and the 2 nuclear attacks. Contrary to official US statements, these airstrikes were directed at civilian populations, not military targets. When you add all the deaths outside of Europe, it brings us to a grand total of 70 million for the war, give or take depending on who's counting and what civilian deaths get included. More people died in World War II than in any other war in history. For comparison, here are 20 or so of the very worst wars and atrocities we have on record. Some of these are more of atrocities than wars, but we've seen how that distinction can get blurry. Some of these spanned across centuries. World War II had the highest body count, and it all happened in just 6 years.
Bro, take it in. Mongol conquest is the second highest. Isn't that Genghis Khan's crew? Didn't they just, like, kill and rape?
When we turn to post-war conflicts, it's hard to say anything that isn't controversial. But the data shows something quite extraordinary has been happening. In 1989, John Gaddis coined the phrase the long peace to identify the absence of conflict between the nuclear powers during the Cold War. 25 years later, the Cold War is over, and the term is still being used, although its meaning may have shifted. European countries have not fought each other, except for this 10-day war in 1956 when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. When we look at European wars before World War II, it looks like this. They tend to be more frequent as you go back, though smaller in scale. And the largest 44 economies of the world have not battled each other since World War II. Rich countries have fought poorer countries, like the US versus Iraq. But rich countries have not fought other rich countries. Such a period of peace between the so-called great powers hasn't been seen since the Roman Empire. To many, peace is too strong of a word. Wars have occurred since World War II, and they can be grouped into these 4 categories. We don't see colonial wars anymore. We've already noted that interstate wars between rich countries have not occurred at all, and here we see wars involving smaller economies have tapered off. That leaves civil wars of 2 types, with and without foreign intervention. And this is what these battle deaths look like alongside of World War II. More people died fighting in World War II than in all the wars since. And again, we can't forget about world population, which has almost tripled since World War II. If we scale these numbers to show deaths in proportion to world population, showing the likelihood that a person on Earth dies in battle, the downward trend becomes even more pronounced. Now, this isn't to infer anything about why this trend is occurring. That's a discussion for another day. You can now interact with this chart to explore what conflicts are behind the totals. Now, bear in mind, we're just looking at battle deaths here, not civilian deaths, but those too are in decline. Peace is a difficult thing to measure. It's a bit like counting the people who didn't die in wars that never happened. We give such importance to the word peace, but we don't tend to notice it when it occurs or report on it. Sometimes it takes reminding ourselves of how terrible war once was to see the peace that has been growing around us. Of course, this trend may not continue, and it's not clear how looking at these charts can help us make the right decisions to ensure that it does. But the longer the long peace grows, the more significant it becomes. So if watching the news doesn't make us feel hopeful about where things are heading, watching the numbers might.
Absolutely amazing. That was incredible. To say that that was amazing would be an understatement. So informative just from the get-go, man. It had me hooked. Thank you for the person that commented. I really enjoyed reacting to the fallout of World War II. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. If you want me to react to anything, please leave it in the comment section down below and I will make sure to react to it as soon as I can. And I'll catch you guys in another one, alright? Peace.